This is for you men out there, and I want you to be honest. Explore the possibility that you're being abusive. By the way, I understand this may also apply to women, but I don't have to continually apologize for that gender. If you were out with your partner and someone began physically assaulting them, how would you react? I believe the vast majority of us would go ballistic. Jump in and do whatever's necessary to protect them. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I was taught it was my responsibility to protect my family and those around me, which is why I feel so compelled to talk about this. Are you aware that lying, minimizing, telling your mate she's overreacting, threatening, intimidating your mate, those are abusive behaviors? In fact, the wounds from a physical blow are going to heal much quicker than the wounds from psychological abuse. And I'm not trying to shame anyone, nor am I innocent from this sort of behavior. Years ago, I had a capmate that reads President of the BBH Club, which stands for Boils on the Butt of Humanity. Guys, I was shameless in the way I treated my wife. But since I've grown up, I want to be a real man, someone I can respect rather than a man-child who's either clueless about the impact of my actions on others or who's so narcissistic that I'm void of compassion and empathy and decency. Let me give a few examples. If your mate gets upset when she catches you in a lie, do you apologize and admit you were wrong for trying to deceive her? Or do you lie through your teeth, accusing her of overreacting? Or maybe even gaslight her by telling her she's seeing things? If your mate gets upset because you failed to follow through with your agreements or commitments, she's normal. But your lack of integrity when you tell her there's something wrong with her is disturbing. If your mate somehow senses a shift in your relationship because you're acting out, whether it's porn, prostitutes, an emotional, physical affair, and they confront you asking, what's wrong? And you just walk away, stonewalling them, are you aware that's abusive? Do you manipulate your mate, telling them how they could have responded better in their approaching you about that issue, rather than owning that you could have handled things better by not doing it in the first place and just taking responsibility for the fact that you screwed up? Do you accuse your mate of violating your privacy when she's actually responding to your unwillingness to be transparent and to let her know what's going on? Do you tell your mate she needs to just get over it when you've traumatized her by your betrayal? When your mate accused you of cheating, did you deny it and tell her she's seeing things and that she's always had a problem with jealousy? Or how about after she's betrayed and she has trouble believing you, do you tell her that she just needs to get over it, that you're doing everything right and that somehow she's overreacting? Would you respect her more if she agreed with you and let you get away with your seedy behaviors and abusing her in your relationship? Newsflash, you know what? Her response is normal. Yours isn't. There's actually something right about getting angry about an injustice or a betrayal, wanting to somehow figure out what's going on. We humans have a built-in emotion called shame. And when we do something hurtful, it's that feeling of shame or guilt that's an internal guide that lets us know that we need to make a course correction. But there's something troubling when instead of being loving, making that course correction, being relational, or at the very least protective, we abuse through our manipulation. And if you think you're unique and that this doesn't apply to you because your intention isn't or wasn't to hurt them, Think again. Good intentions in no way minimize the psychological abuse inflicted by these behaviors. I understand if your mate's asking you to watch this, that there's a small possibility you're not being psychologically abusive through manipulation, control, gaslighting. But I'd ask you to examine your past behaviors to determine if maybe there are other behaviors and other ways you've controlled her, such as lies, omissions, and failures to actually communicate. I want to acknowledge that your mate may also have issues, but her bad behavior in no way justifies yours. Did you know that kids learn to lie by age 3? But when asked if they've lied, the majority of them will admit it. By age 4, however, 80% will deny that they've lied. Younger children lie primarily not to be punished and actually want to be able to make their mates happy. And they believe lying is bad because if you get caught, you get punished. But by school age, another motivation emerges. Children learn that lying is a way to increase a child's power, their sense of control. They can manipulate friends by teasing or bragging or asserting status, and they learn that they can fool their parents. Young children actually process the risk of lying by considering only their own self-protection. Not until age 11 do the majority demonstrate an awareness of its harm to other people. At that age, 48% say the problem with lying is that it destroys trust, and 22% it carries guilt. But even then, a third still say the problem with lying is being punished. How is it that some of us never grew up and we still act like 8-year-olds thinking that it's okay to lie to avoid getting punished? You know, lying as a child, it frustrates parents. But lying in a committed relationship is psychologically damaging. One of my deepest regrets before recovery was the psychological injury that I inflicted on my own wife in my attempts to protect my secret life. Every time she'd suspect something was wrong, I'd accuse her of being jealous, paranoid, that nothing was wrong. That behavior was abusive. Instead of being able to trust her own gut instincts, she began to believe something was wrong with her. And it wasn't just damaging her. Do you know, it robbed me of the opportunity to be truly loved by her. Because if you can't let someone unconditionally know you, you'll never know whether or not you can be unconditionally loved. Behaviors such as lying, deceiving, blaming, minimizing, gaslighting aren't just disrespectful, cowardly, abusive, but actually, it's unmanly. I personally believe that we as men were so much better than that. In 1971, a film was released called Le Mans, and it was a fictional depiction of that race. During the movie, Steve McQueen, one of the drivers, looks over to see a wreck that had occurred. And as he looks up, there's a car right in front of him, and he swerves to miss that car, catches the guardrail, goes back and forth several times between the guardrails, totally trashes the car, is taken off in a helicopter to make sure he's okay. A few hours later, he's brought back to the racetrack. The race, of course, is still underway. And the car owner turns to him and says, "Are you okay?" And McQueen says, "Yeah." The guy turns back and says, "The car?" McQueen turns back and says, "I wrote it off." And at that moment I thought, holy smoke. That's how I want to be. I want to be someone who can just say, screwed up. The problem is, I recognize, even at 18, that's not how I was. If I had been McQueen in that situation, I would have said, well, actually, there was this guy rubbernecking watching this wreck that had occurred, and I was about to rear end him, and I would have killed the guy. But somehow, I was able to just barely swerve and miss him, but then, unfortunately, I caught the guardrail and totaled the car. But you know what? I saved that guy's life. I would have made myself the hero for riding off the car. That's not who I want to be. And the real question, if you're watching this and you see that, there are times that actually I am abusive. I am someone that is, misleading my mate and psychologically damaging those internal instincts that they have, then you need to do something. In the early 90s, at the Planensburg National Park in South Africa, a problem developed where the young bull elephants were actually killing other animals at the waterhole. The solution was actually quite simple. See, back in the late 70s, that park had been seeded with new elephants, and it brought in pregnant moms to help begin to regrow that population. But there were no older bull elephants. And once they brought in larger bull elephants, you know what? Those teenage elephants suddenly stopped their reckless behavior. They needed older bull elephants to actually help them change and become decent elephants. And I believe the same is true of all of us. I understand that there's a strong possibility those of us guilty of this sort of behavior don't know how to do anything different. Maybe we didn't see anything different as children, but that doesn't make it okay. Change requires being with those who can model what being a true man of character looks like, as well as surrounding ourselves with others that are committed to that goal. Research is clear that it's healthy community that facilitates character development, integrity. I need like-minded individuals that I can emulate in my journey to become whole, to be a whole man. And that's one of the primary reasons that I developed the Hope for Healing course at A Fair Recovery. It actually highlights the thinking errors that we developed that allowed us to get away with being abusive. It helps you understand the impact of your behavior on others. It gives specific tools you can utilize to help your mate heal rather than continuing to traumatize her. By the way, there's also a Hope for Healing course for women. My challenge to you today is just live out of your adult self. Be someone who your mate can respect, someone that you can respect. If you're guilty of these behaviors, become someone who brings life to others, not someone who's sucking the life away from your family. I hope you'll join me in that journey of becoming a whole man. I'm Rick Reynolds, founder and president of Fair Recovery to Healing.